My name is Daniel. I'm 34 years old. And for most of my life, I believed I had a good father. Then one Tuesday morning, I found a letter. Not addressed to me. Hidden behind a drawer I'd accidentally pulled too far. My hands weren't shaking yet. But they would be. The name on that letter wasn't my dad's. The dates didn't match. And the word written at the bottom, son, was pointed at me. I stood in that kitchen for 4 minutes. I counted. Because I didn't know what else to do. Everything I remembered, the fishing trips, the school runs, the man who cried at my graduation, suddenly had a question mark attached to it. Every single memory. And the worst part? I wasn't the only one who knew. Someone in my family had been sitting across from me at dinner for 34 years, knowing exactly who I was. And saying nothing. Before I tell you what actually happened, if you're new here, please like this video and subscribe. Drop a comment below, where are you watching from? Now let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. 3 bedrooms. Same neighbors for 20 years. Dad worked construction. Mom made dinner at 6 every night. Nothing unusual. Nothing out of place. That was the story I knew. But here's what I want to ask you right now. Have you ever looked at a family photo and felt something, not wrong exactly, just slightly off? Like a picture that's hung crooked for so long you stopped noticing. I felt that once. I pushed it away. I shouldn't have. Because some lies don't announce themselves. They wait. They sit quietly inside ordinary moments. Inside handshakes at Christmas. Inside conversations that stop the second you walk into a room. I was 8 the first time something didn't add up. I didn't have the words for it then. I just felt it, this small, cold feeling in my chest that I couldn't name. I buried it. For 26 years. And then one Tuesday morning I pulled a drawer too far. And everything I thought I knew about my father, my family, my own name, started coming apart. Fast. You need to hear what happened next. My dad's name was Robert. Everyone called him Rob. Big hands. Quiet voice. The kind of man who fixed things without being asked. He coached my little league team 2 seasons in a row even though I was terrible. He drove 4 hours when my car broke down during college. Never complained. Never made me feel like a burden. Saturday mornings he made eggs. Same way every time. Too much butter. Slightly burnt edges. I loved it. We weren't a family that said I love you constantly. We showed it differently. A hand on the shoulder. Showing up. Staying late. And my mom, she was the talker. Always filling the silence. Always laughing first. They balanced each other perfectly. At least that's what I saw. Looking back now I noticed things I didn't notice then. How she'd sometimes go quiet mid-sentence. How certain topics would just disappear. How my dad would glance at her sometimes during family conversations like he was checking something. I thought that was just marriage. Just how adults communicated. I was wrong. There was something underneath all of it. Sitting there. Patient. Waiting for me to get close enough to find it. I was 22 when it first happened. Christmas dinner. Whole family around the table. My Uncle Gary, my mom's older brother, had a few drinks. He was telling old stories. Laughing loud. The way he always did. Then someone mentioned my name. And Gary looked at me. Just for a second. And something moved across his face. Not a smile. Not quite. He looked away fast. Picked up his glass. Changed the subject himself. I noticed. But I didn't say anything. You don't interrogate your uncle at Christmas dinner over a look. So I filed it away. Deep. 3 months later I'm helping Mom sort through some old boxes in the attic. Boxes from before I was born. Old bills. Letters. A broken clock. Normal stuff. Then I found a photograph. My mom. Young. Maybe 19. Standing next to a man I didn't recognize. His arm around her. Both of them smiling. Nothing unusual about that. Except on the back someone had written a date. And a name. The name wasn't Robert. I almost asked her right there. Almost. But she walked back in and I slid the photo into my pocket without thinking. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept that photo for 6 months. In my wallet. Behind my license. I'd take it out sometimes. Just stare at it. The man's face. His jawline. The way he stood. I started comparing things I shouldn't have been comparing. Because here's something I never said out loud growing up. I looked nothing like my dad. Rob was broad. Dark-haired. Heavy-set. I was lean. Light-eyed. My nose was different. My hands were different. People would meet us together and just move on. Nobody ever said he looks just like you. I told myself genetics were complicated. I told myself that for years. Then my cousin Rachel said something at a family barbecue. Casual. Throwaway. She said, "You know, you and Gary have the same eyes." She laughed and walked away. She didn't mean anything by it. I stood there holding a paper plate going completely still. Gary. My mom's brother. My uncle. I went home and pulled out the photograph. Looked at the man standing next to my mother. Looked at his eyes. Then I looked in the mirror. I put the photo face down on the counter. And I didn't touch it again for 2 weeks. My dad had a heart attack in February. Mild, he recovered. But it scared everyone. The doctors asked the usual questions. Family history. Genetic conditions. Things we needed to know going forward. I sat in that hospital room filling out a form and I hit a section I couldn't answer. Paternal medical history. I stared at that line for a long time. Rob was sitting right there. Talking to a nurse. Looking tired but okay. And I couldn't write his name down without something twisting in my chest. That was the moment I stopped pretending. I ordered a DNA kit 3 days later. Didn't tell anyone. It came in a plain box. I did the swab alone in my bathroom at 11 at night. Sealed it. Mailed it before I could change my mind. Then I waited. 23 days. I counted every single one. I checked the app every morning before I got out of bed. Refreshing. Nothing. Refreshing. Nothing. And the whole time I kept thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this whole thing is in my head. Maybe the results come back and I laugh at myself and throw that photograph away forever. I really wanted to be wrong. I wasn't. The results didn't give me a name right away. They gave me something else first. Ethnicity markers I didn't recognize. A completely different regional breakdown than what my family had always claimed. And then, a list of DNA matches. People the app said I was related to. I didn't recognize a single name on my dad's side. Not one. But on the unknown side there were matches. Distant ones. Third cousins. Fourth cousins. Real people with real profiles and family trees attached. I started clicking. I built a document. Names. Locations. Dates. I stayed up until 3 in the morning 3 nights in a row just mapping connections. Following branches. Looking for a trunk. One name kept appearing at the center of everything. A family from western Pennsylvania. Same last name threading through multiple matches. I searched that name online. Found a Facebook profile. A man. 61 years old. Same town my mother grew up in. I sat back in my chair. He had a son in one of his photos. Late 20s. Standing at a lake somewhere. I leaned closer to my screen. The resemblance wasn't subtle. It wasn't something I had to convince myself of. It was just, there. Staring straight back at me. I called my mom on a Sunday. Didn't tell her why. Just said I was coming over. She made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table like we had 1,000 times before. I put my phone down between us. The DNA results pulled up on the screen. She looked at it. Then she looked at me. And she didn't say anything. That silence told me everything I needed to know. No confusion. No what is this? No I don't understand. Just, stillness. The kind that only comes when someone has been rehearsing for a moment they always knew was coming. My chest went tight. I asked her one question. Just one. Is Robert my biological father? She picked up her coffee cup. Put it down without drinking. Looked at the table. Then she said no. One word. Quiet. Like she'd been holding it in her mouth for 34 years and was finally just setting it down. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just sat there while the entire version of my life I had been living rearranged itself silently around that one word. No. Everything before that moment was one life. Everything after was something else entirely. She talked for 2 hours. I didn't interrupt. I just let her go. Because once she started she couldn't stop. Like a dam that had been holding for 3 decades finally gave way all at once. She was 19. She was in love with someone else before my dad. His name was Thomas. They dated for almost 2 years. Then something happened between them. She never told me exactly what. Just that it ended badly and fast. She found out she was pregnant 3 weeks after the breakup. She called Thomas. He didn't answer. She called again. He told her it wasn't his problem. That was the last conversation they ever had. 6 months later she married Robert. He knew. He knew from the beginning. He looked at her and said, "It doesn't matter. That baby is mine." I had to stop her there. He knew. This whole time. My dad knew. She nodded. I stood up. Walked to the window. Stood there for a long time looking at nothing. Because I didn't know if I was angry. Or completely broken. Or somehow more grateful than I had ever been in my entire life. All three. Simultaneously. It didn't make sense. And it made perfect sense. I drove home that night with one name in my head. Thomas. I said it out loud in the car just to hear how it sounded. It sounded like nothing. Like a stranger's name. Because that's exactly what it was. I already had a last name from my DNA research. Thomas Whitfield. Western Pennsylvania. 61 years old. Still living in the same town where my mother grew up. I looked him up again that night. Properly this time. No more hesitating. He had a Facebook profile. Semi-private. Profile photo was him at some kind of outdoor event. Gray-haired. Heavy-set. Glasses. I stared at his face for a long time. Nothing. No recognition. No pull. Just a man I had never met who happened to share half my DNA. But then I clicked on his photos. And there was that picture again. His son. Standing at the lake. I found the son's profile. His name was Aaron. 29 years old. Mechanic. Lived 40 minutes from Thomas. Aaron had my nose. My exact nose. I closed the laptop. Opened it again 30 seconds later. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about finding a biological family. The discovery doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a door. And you have no idea what's behind it. I drove home that night with one name in my head. Thomas. I said it out loud in the car just to hear how it sounded. It sounded like nothing. Like a stranger's name. Because that's exactly what it was. I already had a last name from my DNA research. Thomas Whitfield. Western Pennsylvania. 61 years old. Still living in the same town where my mother grew up. I looked him up again that night. Properly this time. No more hesitating. He had a Facebook profile. Semi-private. Profile photo was him at some kind of outdoor event. Gray-haired. Heavy-set. Glasses. I stared at his face for a long time. Nothing. No recognition. No pull. Just a man I had never met who happened to share half my DNA. But then I clicked on his photos. And there was that picture again. His son. Standing at the lake. I found the son's profile. His name was Aaron. 29 years old. Mechanic. Lived 40 minutes from Thomas. Aaron had my nose. My exact nose. I closed the laptop. Opened it again 30 seconds later. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about finding a biological family. The discovery doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a door. And you have no idea what's behind it. I drove home from that diner completely hollow. Not sad. Not happy. Just empty in a way I hadn't expected. Because meeting Aaron made everything more real. And more real meant I couldn't compartmentalize anymore. Couldn't treat this like a puzzle I was solving from a safe distance. This was my actual life. I started questioning everything. Not dramatically. Quietly. In the middle of ordinary moments. Washing dishes. Driving to work. Lying awake at 2 a.m. Who was I before I knew this? Who am I now? Are those even different people? I called my dad. Rob. I hadn't spoken to him since the conversation with my mom. 3 weeks of silence between us for the first time in my life. He picked up on the second ring. I didn't have a speech prepared. I just said, "Did you ever once think of me as anything other than your son?" He didn't hesitate. Not even a breath. He said, "Never. Not one single day." And something in me just released. Because here's what I understood in that moment. Biology is a fact. But a father is a choice. Robert chose me before I was even born. Chose me without hesitation. Without conditions. That's not nothing. That's everything. Thomas never responded. I waited another month. Then I stopped. Some people aren't ready. Some never will be. I made peace with that. Because I wasn't looking for a replacement. I already had a father. Aaron and I still talk. Not every week. But regularly. Lunch last month. 3 hours. He's a good person. Whatever this is, we're still figuring out what to call it. My mom and I took time. Hard conversations. Long silences. We got there. And Rob. We don't discuss it. We don't need to. Last Sunday I went over for breakfast. Eggs. Too much butter. Slightly burnt edges. He slid the plate across without a word. I ate every bite. The truth always finds a way out. You cannot build a life on something hidden forever. But sometimes on the other side of the hardest truth you find something you didn't know you were missing. I have a dad who chose me before I took my first breath. I have a brother I didn't know existed 8 months ago. And I finally have a version of my story that makes sense. So one last question. If everything you believed about your family turned out to be different, would you want to know?